Hello, I'm Julian Kai.
And I'm Steve French.
Welcome to Creative Therapy, the show where we talk openly, freely, and often personally about themes and issues surrounding the joys and frustrations of creativity. And what are we talking about today? Well, this is a subject that Steve and I have, I think, briefly talked about before. We both of us agree that we sort of suffer from this slightly, and I did a little bit of Googling to see if I could, get some research, because we like to research this show in great depth. Not really, and I thought I'd do a bit of Googling just to see what's out there, find a bit of information, so we could talk about this fully, deeply, and openly. And I couldn't really find anything. It was only a tentative bit of research, as is our prone to doing, but I couldn't really find anything about it. Maybe I was putting the wrong terms in, but I like to call it child syndrome, which sounds a bit weird. We all know the films Freaky Friday. Have you seen the film Freaky Friday, Steve?
I have, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about
theme as Big.
Big, exactly, Big, Freaky Friday. I'm talking about the 1976 version of Freaky Friday, of course, with Jodie Foster and Barbara Harris, not the 2003 monstrosity with Lindsay Lohan, of course. I've not seen that, I'm going to call it a monstrosity anyway, because you should never remake a film like the original Freaky Friday with Jodie Foster. No. And so Big, so obviously the concept is, and there's loads of other films, I think, that spawned loads of other films, didn't it? And the concept of basically swapping places, so the youngster is in the adult's body and the grown-up is in the youngster's body. So we're not going to talk about that we've switched into other people's bodies, because I don't think that has happened. But also also Peter Pan, I was thinking, and this basically the whole thing about being a grown-up but not necessarily feeling like the stereotypical grown-up we feel we should do, and beating ourselves up about it, maybe a bit about basically being, I don't know, the stuff we do. This is a prime example, doing this YouTube channel, doing what we do, filmmaking, doing creative stuff. Do you feel that there's a sort of element of guilt that you're doing something that you do when you're sort of much younger, and it's a bit of fun and you're playing, whereas really you should be going and getting a sensible job and having a proper income and settling down and doing all that kind of serious stuff? That's what we're talking about today. It's all a bit of a mess because it doesn't really have a thing, does it?
No, I mean, I guess also tied in with that is the whole idea that time is running out, and that's probably the thing that I'm guilty of most of the time, is that you've got to a certain age, you're not going to be able to do such and such anymore, or someone of your kind of advanced years shouldn't necessarily be trying to make films anymore. That's that's a young person's exercise, but also that ties in with the whole idea that am I a man infant because I want to be doing this?
I think because we're doing what we enjoy and what's fun and what we love, and it's sort of like playing in a way, and as your kids you play and you make little films, don't you, and you do little things like that. And certainly I think it's very, that you've hit it. I mean, I think I've sort of felt this a lot in my adult life, but especially as you get older and you sort of feel you're still doing this, and we're still doing little YouTubey things, and we're still making our own little short films and stuff. I mean, you've just finished a job that we can't talk about yet, but so you could probably feel a little bit more legitimate because you've had it's a proper serious job. It's doing what you kind of, to a certain extent, what you want to do, or in the right area. So maybe that's justified your choices a little more. Whereas I, on the other hand, are still sort of trying to justify my choices all the time because we're sitting around spending our time doing this, and we should be perhaps being an accountant somewhere.
Well, I mean, there is that, and I think both you and I are similar in that we've never really had traditional 9-to-5 jobs like people that kind of they get into a relationship, they get married and have children, settle down, and have 2.1 kids and a dog, and buy a house in the suburbs. And the stereotypical things that guys of our age probably do, and maybe sometimes if you're kind of being judgy about those people, you could say, well, they've given up their aspiration and just decided to concentrate on raising children and being a husband or wife. So But
Yeah.
maybe not. Maybe sometimes I do think to myself, because I am like you, forever tortured and guilty and beating myself up about the fact that I'm not being as creative as I want to be. Maybe I often feel like, well, would I be happier if I was in that situation and not necessarily constantly thinking, whilst I'm watching a TV program or looking at the internet, I should be doing something else. I should be advancing this career or this thing that I want to do, rather than sitting doing something that someone who just kind of has a fairly easy life of a 9 to 5 and doesn't have to worry about it. They don't ever have that guilt, I
No.
guess, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
do they? They can sit down and relax and not feel guilty that they're not doing something else, unless
Absolutely.
they're being
I
told
think
to,
that there's
decorate the place.
I think we've said before, haven't we, that there's a sort of, you sometimes wonder whether there's a joy to not having those creative frustrations that we find we have, and being happy
Yeah.
to go and do a 9 to 5 job, and having that whole mentality that you're sort of working to earn some money, and then you can go to the pub in the evening, or go on holiday or do these things, and you're sort of content with that, as opposed to, I don't know, this constant sort of urge to do something more creative. I mean, we keep going. This whole channel is about creativity, so we keep talking about creative. But that creative urge to do something, and sometimes is that a burden? And I think that's going into a slightly parallel subject, which all of these creative therapies are. They all merge into one at the end of the day. But that is it a burden or a blessing? That whole thing. Sometimes you wish you had a sort of simpler mind, and you're happy to go and work in an ordinary sort of day job.
Hmm.
And just be happy with that. But we constantly have this yearning to do something that's incredibly difficult and ambitious, and therefore and a struggle, and ultimately perhaps not necessarily achieving that. Therefore, never
And then
feeling
feeling
satisfied,
even more
feeling
guilty.
guilty.
Yeah,
Feeling guilty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's an imposter syndrome thing as well, tied into the whole
yeah.
thing as well, because then you think, well, okay, I'm too old really to be aspiring to do so and so, and you feel like an imposter, as well as you have, child syndrome. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it is all.
you're just a whole mess of guilty emotions, really, aren't you, the whole time?
Yeah, which is kind of justifying why we set up this channel and got this section of the channel called Creative Therapy, because I think this is very good for us to both sit and sort of ramble on about this kind of stuff, and maybe if anyone's watching and also suffering from this, they can comment and join in the discussion, because it's good
We
to
won't
hear
be
other
the only
people.
ones.
No, exactly.
I know there's plenty of other people, and you do that thing where you're looking around and you on the internet and you latch onto a meme that says, Samuel L. Jackson, started acting when he was 50, and look how successful he is
Yeah.
now. Or there's some
And then-
businesswoman who didn't start her business until she was 60, and now look at her. And you
Exactly.
latch onto those memes.
Yeah, and they give you a little bit of hope, but that's the thing, isn't it? I think the difference is bringing it sort of back to the Freaky Friday syndrome, or child syndrome, whatever we want to call it, is that thing of, you probably don't feel that if you've had a lot of success. If you become, I think I suffer from that slightly, because I've done so. I think I've had one proper job. No, I've had lots of proper sort of day jobs, working in shops, stuff, as you when you finish college, or when you're going through college or whatever. But I came out. I became an actor and was a sort of actor for a long time, and so did all that kind of stuff. And again, that's the whole thing. You feel you're sort of playing, and you feel you've never really grown up. I think as an actor, you have that inbuilt childlike thing about you, so you never particularly mature. All my friends are these sort of mature grown-ups, and I still feel I'm not, even though I'm probably a couple of years older than them. But I put that down personally to sort of following the path of being an actor, where you sort of have to be a big kid to a certain extent, and then following a path of a sort of creative path, photography, filmmaking, all that kind of stuff, and not having that sensible job. But then going back to the point, if I can remember it, I guess it's, if you're successful in your career, if you go out and you work a lot, and go from one job to another, I guess then perhaps you feel a bit less like that. So I'm wondering if it's tied into sort of regular income and stuff like that, because there's always that worry. Certainly for me, I never know when I'm getting paid next. You're freelance. I run my own business. I do this and that. You kind of never know, especially over the past year or so, when we've had this pandemic and everything, where it's all been all over the place. So I think there's something to be said from having a job where you have a regular income, and then that gives you that sense of I don't know. You can you have the ability to do achievement, and you can do stuff, can't you? You know, you've got money, you can get mortgages, you can get nice cars, you can do all that. You've got that regular income, you can rely on that, the whole conventional life, do all that stuff. Whereas if you never have, and I've always had careers predominantly had careers where you never quite know where your next job is coming from. I think that also has a little bit of an impact in not necessarily feeling like a proper grown up, you know. Because then you don't have those things, you know. You don't often have those commitments and things that proper grown ups have that make you become a bit more sensible. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. No, and I completely understand. I mean, I think we do both relate to each other when it comes to all of this, and but I mean, maybe we try and put a positive spin on it and think, well, you know, should we be feeling that way? Should we? Because you're forever seeing these things. Age is just a number; it's irrelevant. You can be successful at any time, but also at the end of the day, occasionally when I'm feeling fairly confident about things, I say, well, if what I'm trying to do, you know, doesn't kind of eventually lead anywhere, and that's another question: is where do I actually think it would lead at this point? Would you still do it anyway? And sometimes I think to myself, well, yeah, you know, if I want to make a short film, or I want to make a feature film, or I want to film anything, it's for my benefit, and if I like it, and other, you know, I should be happy. But if other people like it, then that's fine. But I should be doing it for myself first and foremost.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think we need to do it. We need to do that stuff. I've done things, you know, where I've not, and in fact, you know, I've had a sort of dry spell of doing stuff for quite a while, you know, and we've talked about this before. When, you know, you've got kids and stuff, it's quite difficult to find the time to do something that takes a lot of time, like writing a script and making a short film or something. So I've been very rubbish at putting any kind of content that I'm happy with out, or making anything. But yeah, you would need to do it, and I think we need to do it. So, but then there's that thing that I guess is that whole making something that we enjoy, making a hobby your business or your career, isn't there? The perhaps sensible person would go and get a normal job and, you know, do a little bit of filmmaking, do a bit of Amdram, do whatever, you know, on the side. You know, that's how the sensible person do it. But the less sensible person would try and make a career of that, and that suddenly becomes very hard, doesn't it?
But also, I mean, again, trying to be positive, which is unlike me, I know. But some people, and I know some people look at me in this way, and I'm sure they probably look at you in this way, is that I have actually made a success out of making my hobby into a career, and you've done the same thing. Yeah. It's irrelevant whether you're sitting, you know, in a multi-million-pound house, you know, on cushions of money because you've made so much from doing the thing that you want to do, but you are making a living, and you are doing what you're not basically stuck in a desk job doing something that you hate day in, day out, and getting to Friday and thinking, oh my God, how can I bear going back to that job again on a Monday? You know, it's one of those things. We probably are viewed by lots of other people that we have made a success out of what we want to do. It's just degrees of success, isn't it? And we should probably give ourselves a break and look at ourselves and think, we actually are successful. You know?
You've got to look around and see what you've got, haven't you? I was thinking this the other day. Yeah, you do take for granted what you've got, and you've got to look around. I get to spend a lot, you know, because I'm self-employed and because I've chosen this path. I get to spend a lot of time with my kids, and I get to hang out with them, you know, bring them up and be very hands-on as a dad, which is the kind of person I am and the kind of dad I really want to be. And you see sort of people around you who just, you know, who are just off at work and working long hours and stuff, and then, you know, they just get perhaps an evening and the kids are in bed, you know, and the weekend. So absolutely, sure, they've got all the money and the lovely car and the holidays, but you know,
I never see their kids.
But then I wonder whether, I mean, I wonder whether then that whole child syndrome thing is something that's just part of you, or something that is put on you because of the choices you make, or whether, you know, even if I perhaps went and didn't follow the path and wanted to be an actor from when I was very young and then get involved in filmmaking, photography and all that, whether if I did go down a sensible job route, whether that would have sort of knocked it out of me, or whether I'd just be someone in a sensible job that's just a great big kid.
Yeah, I think it's probably
nurture nature, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's in your nature, and there's not anything you can do about it. I think, you know, it's the way you are.
Though I think getting those jobs with pressures and working up the ladder of sort of the corporate world. I mean, I know nothing about that world, so I'm probably sounding like an idiot. But I would imagine having those pressures and having those kind of jobs does make you a more sensible, a more grown up, you know. And so I do think it's a lot to do with the choices you make, and that, you know, I've never had those sort of responsibilities or things. You know, you've had different responsibilities. You know, you have different stresses and things in the way we've chosen. But I guess, you know, I've be able to get to the age I am now, still feeling like I'm a teenager or in my early 20s, you know, playing around with YouTube and making little films, because that's just what I've done all this time. You know, I've never.
Well, exactly.
lost that.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? And it's something that I know we both struggle with. But I don't think it would necessarily. Would it stop you? Do you think trying to continue doing what you're doing? I don't think you'd suddenly get to a stage ever in your life and think, I'm going to give that up. I think. Yeah, I think you and I are probably similar in that we just keep doing what we want to do until
I
the
know.
day we,
I seriously think about it. I seriously think about it quite a lot, and especially now we've just got, you know, through this year, and the world is supposed to be, where England is supposed to be easing up its lockdown restrictions and all that, and I'm sort of wondering what state my business is in and what I'm doing. I mean, I think this is where you and I come from a different point, because you've been working very hard over the whole period. And I've, you know,
that's debatable. I've been,
well, okay, but you've been.
I know what you mean.
Slightly more harder work than me. You've been getting up early, going to work, and coming home. Yes. Whereas I've been you know,
11-hour days. Yeah,
I've been, you know, sitting around on the floor playing with my little 4-year-old, and and thinking, should I still be trying to get some, you know, portrait work or something, you know. So I have been sort of seriously thinking, you know, you get to. I do this every year. I go, you know, do I want to keep plugging away as a self-employed, running my own business? Do I want to do this? It's still, you know, I don't ever feel it's grown to the level that it probably should have, because it's a very difficult industry with lots of competition around. Or, you know, would it be more sensible just to go and try and find a sensible job with regular hours and regular income each month, you know? And I still think that all the time, and I sort of run it past, and it almost appeals to me, the whole, you know, going just to work in Sainsbury's. I use that as an example because you just go there, you get told what to do, you do your job, you come home, you get paid. You know, you don't have to worry or stress about anything. I mean, there probably are, no disrespect to anyone who works in a supermarket, there probably are worries and stresses. But and I go, it sort of appeals to me, but I also know that probably after a week of doing that, I'd go insane, and I'd be going, you know, I need to be doing something. I need to sit and write a short film. I need to do a creative photo shoot. So it's tricky, you know. It swings and roundabouts, isn't it? The grass is always greener, but it's interesting. Yeah. Interesting. This is why therapy. This is why this therapy is good.
This was why we should be on laying on couches.
Well, when we're allowed to do this, we started this show, didn't we, in lockdown, and we're still sort of in lockdown. This is why we're remote. It would be nice to do it in person, and then perhaps we take it in turns to sit in the chair or lie on the couch, the couch behind me, which I don't know whether you can see properly, but. Yeah, it's an interesting one, I think, and I mean, as all these topics do, they sort of all merge into one big topic of sort of analysing ourselves and our choices, don't they? But I think
it's difficult to know whether people can identify with it. You know, like we've discussed before, this is another thing that we're both permanently beating each other up about, or beating ourselves up about, is that, like, this show that we decided to do basically for our own benefit at the end of the day, as a therapy for each other, and also to record the conversations that we were having with each other anyway. Yeah, you know, we afterwards, Julian puts it all together and uploads it to YouTube, and you're forever thinking, well, there's no value in it for anyone. Will they watch it because it's not telling them how to, edit?
We're not giving any answers or solving any problems, are we?
No, exactly. But I mean, that's again us kind of an example of us kind of being hard on ourselves, because I'm sure people out there will relate to it and be happy to watch this and think, yeah, I feel that way too. Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, as Julian said, make a comment if you stumble across this episode and agree, then make a comment at the bottom. We'd like to know there's more people.
I think this whole channel is going to, as we keep saying in these, is finding its feet and finding its direction. And at the moment, we're very much doing this for us, which I think is a good starting point. And hopefully, like you say, Steve, that people will listen to this and go, I feel that as well. That's exactly the thing. And I'm, and I'm much younger than those two guys. So if those two old guys are still feeling like that, but still sitting there developing a new YouTube channel or making a little film or doing whatever or going to help
They'd
other
have to
people
be
make
very
short films,
young, though, wouldn't they? To be younger than us.
they'd have to be
They would have
almost-
to be like 15,
yeah.
16
They'd
year
have
olds.
to be
wouldn't
that
they?
sort of age, which is probably the age we should be sitting here doing YouTube channels. I try to think, shall we do a bit of research on over 50s on YouTube and what the sort of stuff they're putting out? And they're probably professors, talking about proper,
Yeah, probably those grown-up people. Yeah, exactly.
Proper grown-up
Ones that we've
people
just
talking
been
about how to mend the toilet or something like that, or a plumbing show.
It's funny.
I
I had a good example of that this week. I don't know. It's a very sad story, but I don't know whether you watch Friday Night Dinner. But the lead
I
actor,
don't, but I know the actor. Yeah.
Yeah, John Ritter died unfortunately this week. It's very sad.
Yeah, very sad.
I was really surprised to know he was 54, and I'm like, so to me, looking at him, he's the example of someone who isn't me, who's like, he's got a couple of pretty much grown-up kids in the show. That is a couple of grown-up kids. He's a responsible dad, although he is hilarious and completely irresponsible in a lot of ways. But I don't know whether he's supposed to be playing 54 in the TV show. But I looked at when I saw his bio after he died, I was like, wow, 54. I didn't realise we were quite similar in age, and he's one of those grown-up men that we've just been talking about.
Absolutely,
it's
absolutely.
weird.
And that's the thing.
Are we
That's
just
a very
fooling ourselves?
That's a very good point. And it goes again. You don't know when you're suddenly going to get a brain tumor and pop your clogs or get hit by a bus. And so I guess we've got to get off our asses a bit. And I'm talking to myself because I know, Steve, you've been very busy. So it's like you've been very busy doing stuff.
Yeah, but not necessarily doing what I want to do, and I'll be kind of delayed. That goes back to what episode 1 was it about procrastination, because I'm king of that. So,
but the journey the path we have chosen. Steve, my son, is a difficult path wrought with obstacles, and when you're slightly lazy and procrastinating like we are, it's an even longer path.
It is.
But this is another thing. One does wish one started doing stuff earlier, but it's that whole. It does take a long time to climb up the tree, doesn't it? And get in and work your way through to the thing. We like to sort of jump in at the fun end straight away, which is probably why we do our own films rather than go and work on other people's films or stuff.
I mean, it is one of those things which only comes from the benefit of being older. You can kind of stand in this position and look back and go, well, I should really have made that choice when I was 18 to now be in the position that I want to be, that I feel like I want to be at the age of 50, 51, 52 or whatever. Whereas when you're 18, you don't know how you're going to feel when you're over 50. So can't necessarily say to yourself, I'm going to make this choice and I'm going to go and do this because I know when I'm 50, that's what I'm going to want to be doing. So it's difficult from the position you're in now to look back. But when you're 18, 19, 20, I think it's probably very difficult to kind of make the choices that will benefit you when you get to a certain age. Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah, they do say that's true, is it? Yeah, we sit here being wise old men now. And learning. That brings us to probably another good topic of conversation for another episode of learning from your mistakes, and looking when where we're at now, you look back at things and you sort of go, perhaps should we have done that the same way, or I find myself never learning from myself. I think because there's too big a gap between the things I do. And because I've got a terrible memory, and actually I wanted to do another episode all about memory as well, because I think memory is hugely important, this kind of thing. And if you just forget about stuff and you go back and you end up keep making the same mistakes because you haven't learned from them. But it's interesting. Well, perhaps we should wrap this up. This was always going to be perhaps a slightly short one because I think trying to keep these onto a more specific topic rather than the big overall topics. Go back to look at the other episodes on our channel if you're watching, and we've tackled a few of these creative therapies, and I'll have to make the playlist of these where we've talked a bit more broadly, I think, at the beginning, and the idea is to sort of narrow down into specific things like imposter syndrome or like this child syndrome or whatever it's officially called, if there is such a thing. But
maybe we could get one of those grown-up men who happens to be a eminent psychologist on the show and talk to him about.
Yeah, we need to get a proper
someone who knows what they're talking
therapist
about.
to talk to us rather than us just doing this pop psyching ourselves. But it's good. It's good just to sort of talk it through. And these shows are always a bit rambly and a bit unplanned, but I think that's the nature of them, isn't it? It's just a sort of flow of consciousness about how we're sort of feeling about things.
Hey, if people will watch, a couple of teenagers playing Minecraft, I'm sure someone will watch this.
Well, yeah. Hopefully, spread the word. Yeah, subscribe to this channel, please. And we'll try and do more. We're trying to put stuff out every week, and we're sort of being okay, managing that slowly. But who knows whether we can keep that up? But yeah, good to talk about that. Interesting stuff. Nice one, Steve.
See you later.
Subscribe.